A thanks to a long-time friend, Holden who's written this his first review for the channel, but as a huge fan of JRPGs, he was definitely the man to ask for this one. Is there something in the drinking water over at Square Enix HQ? It feels like a company on fire right now, with so many releases coming out. Both new games and old are hitting the Switch, and quite frankly, I couldn't be happier. Remastered SAGA Minstrel song was announced back in May this year, and I was incredibly excited. Having played this in my youth, I always thought it was a game that was harshly criticised, and that perhaps in a newer generation, it could find a new lease of life. It was originally released for PlayStation 2, a remake of a Super Famicom game from 1992, and while you might be familiar with the series, thanks in no small part to Square's effort to port anything and everything they can find, back in 2005, it was all a bit of a mystery to a Western audience. Is this the minstrel's swan song? Well, let's find out. The Saga series often presents a free-flowing story system, with shorter narrative stories spread across a handful of protagonists. They're often very open, and not a whole lot of guidance is given to the player. A minstrel song is the epitome of that approach, for better and sometimes worse. It's set in the world of Mardius, where thousands of years ago the gods battled one another until Sauron, not to be mistaken for a certain Sauron from Lord of the Rings, was imprisoned by 10 fate stones. Those were spread across the vast world, and now in the present day, nefarious forces are trying to collect them and unleash the evil god upon the world once more. That then is where our 8 protagonists come in. Yep, Minstrel Song boasts 8 different characters to choose from, each of whom will play a role in keeping the bad guy quiet. You can select whichever one you want, complete their quest for the Fate Stone, and then choose another hero. The issue is, there's not that much of a story. Everything's connected to the main event, leading up to the Fate Stones, but you won't actually know that until the end. Why? Because Minstrel Song is a game about side quests. It is Side Quest the game. Regardless of who you choose, each one has their own introductory story segment. Some will last an hour, while others just a few minutes. Then it takes a back seat while you're travelling around the world helping people, fixing all of their problems, such as finding lost children in caves, or babysitting someone's girlfriend. Yes, it does all lead up to something, but the main narrative isn't exactly apparent, which some players are not going to enjoy. And with all that said, the free-flowing system means that everyone who plays will have a different experience, and in turn a different adventure. If you and your mates start playing, it's a guarantee that you'll both experience something different, and in that regard, you'll have your own unique story. But regular JRPG fans may be a bit dissatisfied with the story delivery overall. And while this might feel like a really negative start to the review, it's important you understand the realities of the story before we get into the gameplay. And for that, you're going to feel more at home. Remastered SAGA is a game with a lot going on. There's too much to get into in this review, but trust me when I say it's got systems coming out of its places. The most important aspects that set this apart from other ones within the same genre are both the character recruitments and the quests. Now you may think that having 8 protagonists is impressive. Well, how about also having dozens of recruitable characters as well? Littered over this vast world, there are loads of unique people to add to your party, from random soldiers to mysterious magicians, and you can even add 7 other protagonists you didn't choose from the off. The limitation here is that you can only have 5 in your party at any one time, and adding a new one after that can be a little troublesome, but considering if you want the true ending, which will require you to play through the game 8 times, you'll be getting more than enough variety. You'll find a good deal of customization. You can wield any weapons and gain affinities for them. You can edit your job classes and make them more proficient in certain skills. And the battle system is also top-notch, with a turn-based system that's deceptively deep, especially after a few hours when it introduces glimmers, combos, reverses, to name but a few. Honestly, you don't need to pay much attention to that. At its purest form, you're just hitting an attack button and watching events play out, whilst trying to make sure everyone stays standing. Now, attacks in this one use BP, which restores a little bit each turn, but weapons also have durability, meaning, yep, your weapons can break. Damage is generally tied to using special attacks though, which adds an element of risk and reward, as those do far more damage. Potentially it could be frustrating having that in the back of your mind, but during my playthrough, that only ever happens a couple of times. As long as you remember to take time to rest at the inn, these will be repaired, or alternatively just get the blacksmith to enhance your weapon. And the combat system is solid enough, but you'll be spending a lot of time in there. You'll gain a slight advantage if you're facing the enemy when you engage combat, but likewise you don't want to get snuck up on. This can lead to you losing rather quickly. Within the game you'll find an abundance of quests. some tied to the story, while others are your run-of-the-mill JRPG 101. What is interesting is that some of them are time sensitive, or they might depend on what you have or haven't already done. So while there might be 50 of them, there's no way you'll be doing them all, at least not in a single playthrough. That might annoy some people, but I like it. It's an intrinsic part of the design, changing the experience depending on what actions you take. For players expecting a linear JRPG, Romancing Saga has surprises in store for you. You have to travel the world and speak to people, find out their woes and then help them, but with little guidance. For example, when playing as one character, you have access to the plains area. Here you can hunt monsters and carry out a few quests, but there's nothing stopping you hopping back on the ship and heading to a completely different place. And the inhabitants of this world are constantly giving you exposition, as well as lore about these different areas. This can encourage the player to naturally create almost quests of their own and head off to these places they've heard about. In that regard, it feels quite organic, and it's quite an ingenious way to introduce the world to the player. So we have combat, exploration, and unique skills which your player can learn, such as searching for treasure, but also ones that involve the traversal of this place, such as the ability to climb or jump to reach new places. If you ran out into this world, you wouldn't know any of it. Aside from the occasional tutorial pop-up, it's important to take your time to talk to the tutorial characters, and you'll get far more out of what is a really enjoyable experience. The controls are almost perfect. It's very difficult to go wrong in an RPG of this kind. It's turn-based, so you'll have plenty of time to make your choices, and there's no real-time events, aside from me legging it away from enemies. However, there is one quite major annoyance, and that's to do with the camera. It's something that shouldn't annoy me because it's exactly the same as other classic JRPGs of that era, like Final Fantasy X, but why on earth can't you move the camera around? No matter how much I wished for it, that right analog stick does nothing, and 90% of the environments in the game are fully 3D models. It doesn't make sense why the camera can't be shifted in those areas. While it doesn't break the game, it does genuinely affect your navigation, particularly when you're moving through tunnels, searching for some treasure, or trying to complete a quest, while keeping your bearings on a camera that never seems to stay in the same orientation. While the story is a little lackluster, Bard's Song is all about its freedom of exploration and playing out through those multiple characters. In that regard, it's a great RPG experience. Combined story and gameplay scores 15 out of 20. Controls would be much higher, but that camera issue was exactly that for me, an issue, meaning that controls score 15 out of 20. Visually, this one might divide opinions. Compared to how it originally looked, it certainly pops off the screen now, and that art style looks so much brighter and more colourful in HD. There's almost some cel shading to the character models, which makes them look much crisper. The environments stand up quite well too. Admittedly, despite the numerous locations, they are quite small, simple and compact, but it certainly suits the HD treatment. Where the division comes in is in the art style. It's the elephant in the room. You're either gonna hate it or maybe mildly hate it. But jokes aside, reaction to the art style has been all over the place. From people laughing out loud to general confusion, or to really quite liking it. You can see what they're going for. It's how the old school sprites on the Super Famicom would look like if they were beefed up to 3D. It's proportionally off, but it makes it unique. This is one of those matter of taste areas. In terms of performance, things are pretty perfect. On the Switch, it runs at 30 FPS, which is absolutely fine for a turn-based RPG. There's solid frame pacing here, and some of the FMVs haven't quite been enhanced as much as everything else, looking a little blurry, as do some of the textures. But overall, I'm going to tell myself they're going for a watercolor styling here, and it runs just as well in handheld mode, with text size not being an issue. For my tastes, visuals and performance score 14 out of 20. The audio is composed by industry legend Kenji Ito, and while he might be the less familiar of the Square classic composers, but he's responsible for many hit soundtracks on Square's Saga series, with this being a remake of that original soundtrack for the Super Famicom game, and it's great. Lots of variety, it's energetic, tense and vibrant. There's even some brilliant slower paced pieces in here, and it elevates the experience so much. Each protagonist has their own theme song which plays as you explore, and it's brilliant that you can listen to the entire soundtrack in the main menu, which I highly advise. You'll find some real gems in there. It's also fully voice acted in English, which is a commendable effort in itself for such an obscure release, but that does come with the caveat of some actors being better than others.
Ever since Rosalia stole Isma's keep from us,
And that's a nice way of saying that some of the voice acting is borderline detrimental to the experience.
My name is Marina. If you learn anything
Especially the NPCs on the streets. I'm pretty sure Square might have actually gone onto the streets to find the people to do the voice acting. So overall, the soundtrack's amazing, the voice acting takes the audio section down a bit. It gets 17 out of 20. Remastered SAGA is going to set you back £19.99 or your regional equivalent, which I think is good value for money for the amount of content you're getting. Playing through with one character is going to take you around 20 hours or so, but as I mentioned, you're going to need to do that many times to get the true ending, and it will provide a different experience each time. Not only have they improved the soundtrack, the visuals, but they've included many different tweakable options, including the speed that you play through the game, which can be toggled by clicking in the right analog stick. If only they'd have let you actually control the camera. Not to mention other quality of life features such as quicker character growth, autosaves, and quick saving from anywhere. They've even added in a little bit more extra content. Could they have done more? Probably, but for the price I think it's decent. It gets 16 out of 20. So there we have it. Remastered SAGA Minstrel Song Remastered won't be for every RPG player, but if you like what you've heard, there's certainly a gem in here. It gets a SwitchUp score of 77%. Thanks again to my pal Holden. I think he nailed this one, and the game was just far too vast for me to work my way through in the time that I've had. So thanks so much for doing that. Let him know in the comments what you thought of the review, and to all of you, just a big thanks for watching the channel. If you want to save 10% on any of the games, you can use code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg to buy your eShop credit. Remember, our 12 days of SwitchUp starts very soon, thanks to our Patreons and members. And oh, do check out our performance review of the new Pokemon patch. Disappointed! For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!
You want a board?